Hello there guys, Daniel Childs back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're doing well and keeping safe on this Friday. In today's news video, we're going to be looking a little bit back on the Zagreb game because I didn't have time to make a review on that. We're also going to be looking at Ben Chilwell's injury, the severity of it. It does not look good based on initial reports, and also a little bit on Lukaku's loan at Inter Milan and the future of the striker at Chelsea. Before we do get into all of that good stuff, got an announcement, obviously, if you didn't see on my YouTube community page and also on my Twitter at SonOfChelsea. SonOfChelsea is now a part of the 90 Min podcast network. You may have seen I've been doing some work with 90 Min. I've been on a couple of their shows in recent months. It's been really cool to have that opportunity and great to announce this partnership because obviously this is not really going to change the YouTube channel, so don't worry if you like watching the videos. They're not going away. That's not changing. It's just you can now listen to them as well, which I know some of you guys are big podcast fans like myself. So from now on, not every single video, but a couple episodes a week, mainly around the matches and the big news, will be going up on this podcast feed. All great podcast providers are the ones you get. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of that good stuff. You'll be able to get it through Son of Chelsea on the 90 Min podcast network. I'll be obviously shooting a link down in the description box below. The first podcast will be that collab with Harry Symeou, so make sure to check out for that. So great to announce that partnership, which hopefully is going to grow and get better. So great to announce that on the channel. But as well, lots of content coming up. We've got my team selector later today after this video, looking at that game on Sunday, the collab as I mentioned, and then of course my review of the Arsenal game, which hopefully will be a positive result on Sunday afternoon. Make sure guys, if you are watching this on the channel, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads. Also do me a massive favor by hitting that like button because it helps new people find the content as well. Let's get into the news. Just a little brief sort of reflection on the Zagreb game. Didn't have time unfortunately to do a review on that game. It was a bit of a dead rubber. I think the big talking points from the game, I think there were actually three, to be honest. The performance of Denis Zakaria, I think the change to the 4-3-3, and of course Ben Chilwell's injury. We will get to Ben Chilwell's injury because that in itself is a massive story. I think the two to speak about is Denis Zakaria. We've sort of been joking about it on the channel so far this season regarding his lack of game time. Is this just another Sound Against situation? But I think Zakaria showed that maybe he could provide a little bit more than that. You don't want to get too ahead of yourselves. This was, I think, opposition Chelsea should be beating. Just because we lost to them earlier in the group, Chelsea should not be losing to Dynamo Zagreb, particularly at home. And it was a very strong team that went out there. But it was nice to see that given the lack of game time, given the struggles that Zakaria has had settling in at Chelsea, for him to show up and put in that performance is really encouraging. And I think he offered a lot of things that I think in sort of our midfield that maybe we've been lacking, that sort of physicality, that dominance. It's very, I said this on Twitter, it's very lazy analysis, but I liked how imposing Zakaria looks in our midfield, and that is something that Chelsea have lacked. So if he can offer a little bit more, I mean, we've only got 3 games now till the World Cup, which is a bit of a shame, but he's probably going to go to the World Cup with Switzerland. Hopefully he can come back and provide a little bit more, and if he can, it's going to offer us a boost in an area where we need some new stuff, basically. That's the simplest way of putting it. So great to see him get on the score sheet. And the 4-3-3, I like the 4-3-3. I like it as a formation. It's not that it's only one formation you can play. I just like that it was getting certain players into areas, and it was getting players into their best roles, particularly Raheem Sterling, who's been struggling of recent. I don't obsess over positions as much anymore because we know how flexible that stuff is in the modern game, and particularly with a coach like Graham Potter, I think you just have to get used to it. But I like the fact that it was creating a lot of high quality opportunities for Chelsea, and getting Sterling back on the score sheet I think was massive personally for him. So all round I think a lot of encouraging performances, but we have to get to Ben Chilwell's injury, and it kind of course links to playing such a very strong team in a game that was a dead rubber. And of course there was a lot of debate around that. I don't think it was the smartest move. I think in what is a ridiculously congested schedule, to play all of those big players that are likely going to feature on Sunday against Arsenal, it didn't make a lot of sense to me, and particularly when I'm seeing Man City rotate quite dramatically, even teams like West Ham doing the same in their final Europa League game. I don't think it makes a lot of sense, and I really hope it doesn't backfire. And you could argue it backfired with Ben Chilwell's injury, pulling up in the last few minutes. It feels like we have not moved on at all from last year, does it? I mean, not only Reece James being out injured, but as well Ben Chilwell. and it's really frustrating. Here in the Telegraph from Matt Law yesterday, Ben Chilwell set to miss out on World Cup with long-term injury. Ben Chilwell is set to receive the crushing confirmation that he will miss the World Cup amid fears the Chelsea left-back could be ruled out for even longer. Chilwell and Chelsea are nervously awaiting the results of a scan, but both parties expect to be told his World Cup dream is over and that he faces a lengthy spell on the sidelines. Distraught teammates are worried that Chilwell has torn his hamstring after he complained of hearing it popping, which could rule him out for up to 3 months. I mean, our luck with injuries this season is just like non-existent, and it's happening to important players. I mean, listen, any injury to any player is devastating for that player, but just seems to be players that you think are going to be first teamers. And are we ever going to see Chilwell and James as sort of a dominant pair fit for the whole season? That's obviously a concern. When I saw the injury, it was like, I guess the best thing you could hope for at the moment, that we've only got 3 games left into the World Cup, but the fact that it could go on for even longer is just devastating for the player. Obviously, Chilwell has done so well to recover from that cruciate injury last season, and to get back into fitness, to get back into form. I think he had a pretty encouraging performance on Wednesday, and then to have this setback again, and it just piles up the injury problems, and it does feel like Chelsea are kind of limping towards this World Cup and kind of need it. I think Potter needs it, and I think we're lucky that we don't have the busy December period that we usually have this season, because in normal circumstances, and you never know, like, the games could have been played differently, they would have been more spread out, maybe we don't get the injuries, that's a hypothetical situation, but to have all of these injuries to N'Golo Kante, which is long term, Ben Chilwell, now Kepa Arrizabalaga, Wesley Fofana, Reece James, to have all of that, and then would be going into a very tricky, I think, festive period. In some ways, it kind of helps Graham Potter that we do have this break, and some of those players are going to be back by the time we return on the 27th against Bournemouth of December, that is. So fingers crossed for Ben, and fingers crossed it's not the worst, but it feels like a recurring theme at Chelsea in recent years, and hopefully it can be fixed. Let's get into the final story, which is about Romelu Lukaku. Fabrizio Romano tweeting here, and there's been a lot of reports around what's going to happen after this loan for Lukaku this season. Inter official balance confirms they paid 7 to 8 million euros loan fee to Chelsea for the Lukaku deal. Apparently Chelsea and Inter have already discussed about the potential of a second season loan for next year. Nothing completed yet, but the intention is clear on both clubs and the player side. Not a massive surprise, and if the financials aren't there, I don't see a future for Lukaku at Chelsea, and I just don't think it's a very healthy one, to be honest. I don't see the benefit for the player, for the coach, for the club. The mood around Lukaku is not going to drastically change, and that is kind of my big thing, because listen, we're not involved in the behind the scenes negotiations here. We don't really know what's going on in the dressing room. I like to speak on sort of the fan side of things, and the mood around Lukaku has been so negative for so long now. I just think it's reached a point of no return, and there's no point going back to that, even though I see him score goals for Inter Milan, even though he's had some injury problems so far this season. And you go on, maybe there could be something, under a new coach like Graham Potter. Could we recover something? I think it's a lost hope at this point, unfortunately. And given when you've got young players like Amanda Breuer coming through, and other players that you can maybe focus on in the future, and the potential of signing Christopher Nkunku, it just kind of makes no sense to go back to it. So hopefully this can be resolved. It'd be a really bad situation, I think, for everyone if he returns and that isn't resolved, because it just doesn't seem like a healthy environment compared to Inter Milan, where he feels very settled and probably plays his best football. It's an awkward, awful situation, but I think I still give credit to Todd Bowley and the club for sorting out quickly over the summer, because I think that if it would have dragged on, it would have made a difficult situation that, turned out bad for Thomas Tuchel, I think even worse. So we'll see how that situation develops in the coming months. Let me know your thoughts on Lukaku and all that stuff in the comments below. But that is it for today's edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. We'll be back again later for my team selectors, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea. Have a great Friday, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.